Okay, so it took a long time to decide on a title for this clip, and finally I went with what Beauty and the Beast misses, or to be more precise, what you miss if you only read Beauty and the Beast or see the Disney adaptations. The story, in fact, is an archetypal story, with one of the oldest known versions being the one of Cupid and Psyche from Greek mythology. And unlike the 1740 version written by a feminist, which hated the moral message of the original story, it has a very detailed and layered amount of morality and moral lessons. First off, let's start with the very first thing. You have three sisters, and they ask each for one thing. And for us that live in this age where we are very privileged to have access to basically everything, anytime, anywhere. It may seem that asking for a red rose, not a big deal. But in fact, red roses were extremely expensive, even more expensive than now, for two main reasons. First reason would be that a rose could only be cultivated on 1 or 2 months a year, especially if you lived in a colder region like Central and Northeast Europe. And the second reason is that most roses, one thing that most people do not know, most roses do not last once you cut them, unless you put them in water, and sometimes not even then, do not last a long time. At most they last a couple of hours. So asking someone to bring you a red rose, especially when it was off season and from far away, was a pretty daunting task, to say the least. It wasn't the less valuable gift, but the most valuable gift in a sense. And here we see the first lesson. Do not ask for things that are extremely hard just to see if someone to obtain, just to see if someone loves you enough to do this for you. It's something women do, and ironically they lose respect for the men that do this for them. So from the first moment we see that Lilly is a bit of a spoiled brat. Now the merchant, her father, didn't find any rose, but on his way back he saw a strange garden in which he saw roses. Probably at first he tried to call for someone, but since no one answered, he stole a rose. Now theft, it's a very serious crime, especially when you live in a very poor country or region or age, because before the 1900s, I'll say, and this was the truth before the 1900s, I'll say, stealing for someone, you might actually, I don't know, cause him 1 or 2 days not to have something to eat. So it's not something that could be overlooked so easily. Also, we're talking about trespassing someone's property and so on. And at the moment that he does this, a talking lion appears. Yes, the beast is a lion. In this story, there are various animals like the tiger or something, but more often than not is a lion, and asks for the life of the man. In a lot of parts, it was for theft. You could be either hanged or have your arm cut off. So yeah, it wasn't a big demand to ask for the merchant's life. So the second moral is do not steal, no matter how much you think no one would mind, or if you think that no one would notice, or how much do you think it's you have a reason to do so, do not steal. And the lion basically says, okay, I will let you live if you let me marry your daughter, and assures the merchant that she will be taken care of. Of course, the garden one is in mansion or castle, depending on the version. So the merchant has no reason to say no, because marrying your daughter to someone rich is is something that's basically, and kind, is someone that most fathers want for their daughters. And the lion actually fits both of the criteria. More than that, the lion says, okay, even if your daughter will live here with me as my wife, you can visit her whenever you can or wherever you want. And I don't know, a couple of times a year, if something happens, she can come visit you. So it's not something like, okay, she's a prisoner or something. She's just the wife of the lion. And of course, the rest, next part of the story is the same. Basically goes home, and here we see something that is good. The fact that she obeys her father and marries the lion. Now, here's the part where the things really start to differ in Beauty and the Beast and the original stories. Basically, the lion, or whatever, Cupid or whatever, tells her from the start, okay, there is a curse on me, and if you do this, you'll lose me forever. Generally, the story, each version has a different version of what the curse is or how it works, but generally she can only meet her husband at night. She cannot see her face because it's dark, or his true face, because in the case of the version with the lion, she can see him as a lion in the daytime, but at night when he's human, she cannot see him. And actually they talked and so on, and basically they actually develop a relationship, something that doesn't really happen in the Beauty and the Beast version. And she even gets pregnant, and that's one. And at some point she has to go to visit her parents and her sisters, and sometimes the first time, sometimes the second time, she listened to advice for someone else, usually the mother or a sister or some other woman, generally an older woman, and disobeys her husband that tells her from the start, if you do this, you will lose me forever. Okay? And the moment she disobeys her husband, basically everything disappears. The castle or the mansion, the garden, her husband, everything. She remains in an open field, pregnant, the clothes probably, with only her clothes on her back and so on. And she's desperate because she cannot go back home. And even if she could, it's not much that she can do. But that's another quality this girl has. And I will talk now, in the next session I'll talk a lot about her qualities. Because the Disney and feminist version do not have the woman having any qualities or having to do any work to accomplish her happy ever after. She just has to be there, okay? And that's not what fairy tales were about. So she doesn't despair, she starts to wonder, and she, after some time, she finds people that are kind enough to help her. But even if the people are like in the Lily and the Lily and the Lion, the sun, the moon, and the winds, or old women like Baba Yaga, or what, Saint Wednesday or Saint Friday, or some ogre women. They do not help her just because she pleads with them. Yes, it's partly because they feel pity on her and so on, but it's not only that. Generally, those characters have a very dangerous side to them, and the fact that she's very kind and basically treats them with respect and tries to reward their hospitality by doing stuff like cleaning and so on in their house. That's the reason why they helped her. Yeah, they give her magical gifts, that's beside the point. Basically, the reason why they help her is not only because they feel pity of them, because they see she has a good heart. She has respect for her elders, for people that she barely knows, but offer hosting to her. She has the willingness to repay when someone has done something good to her, and those are very good, very important qualities that most women today miss. Actually, they don't have those qualities. They don't even know how to clean or cook or do something like that, let alone repay someone for their hospitality with those things. They think it's absurd. So yeah. And even if with this help it takes years, generally 7, because 7 is some sort of recurring number in many fairy tales. 3, 7 are a number of recurring numbers you see in most fairy tales. after 7 years, she manages to find her husband. And in those 7 years, of course, she now has a child. It's extremely small, so hard to take care of. And of course, it's difficult to get. She finds her husband and finds that her husband is about to marry another woman because she broke her promise to him. More than that, the woman doesn't allow her to see her husband, okay, and tries to stop her, but due to the fact that the other woman is greedy, just as she was once, she was in the beginning, she managed just to convince the other woman to let her see her husband for 3 consecutive nights. Of course, she puts some sleeping powder to her husband, and she basically tries to speak to him, but he doesn't answer. And the third night, of course, he answers and they escape. But believe it or not, still things do not go as easy as in Beauty and the Beast and other feminist versions of the stories, because the woman, which in most cases has magical powers, or the mother of the woman in other versions, do not want to let her future husband or her son-in-law to go off with his previous wife. Of course, he's a catch, so why should they? And basically do their best to stop them. And they escape very, very... it's a very hard escape. Basically, they have moments where they outrun the pursuer, moments where the pursuer almost catches up to them, and finally they manage to escape. And you have the happy ever after. As a note, before I end, this version has this story, archetypal story, has also some versions with the genders reversed. For instance, one where the girl turns into a cat. There is one version in Russian folklore where the girl, and this version actually exists also in Arabic stories, where the girl says, okay, you have a number of rooms, there's a number of rooms in my house, you can go wherever you want, but you cannot go in X room where some evil something is in prison. Of course, it doesn't tell the person that something evil is in prison, but of course the same thing goes, you'll lose me forever if you do this. And generally in the story the man dies. He's brought back to life by something that to which the man provided help at some previous time, and most often than not he manages to retrieve his wife, but not always. There are some versions when he doesn't. Okay, Maria Morevna is the story in the Russian version. So, and of course, the room thing also has the Bluebeard story where, well, there are two endings to the story. In one ending, the wife gets killed, which is the proper ending in my opinion, because and the other story which I don't like, it's where the brothers kill Bluebeard and rescue the unfaithful wife. So yeah, as I said, there are various versions, but the most common one is a wife that marries a kind, well-off man, is tested by that man with requirement, something, you don't do this, but due to the advice, and that's the important thing, to the advice of other women, that's something that feminists hate. She disobeyed her husband's, obeying her husband. Wow, such a hated thing for them. And gets to suffer and gets to endure a lot of hardship before managing to get her husband back. I hope you learned something from this, and bye.